So hello everyone, today we are going to learn about cells, the unit of life. So in this lesson, we are going to learn about how many types of cells are there, how many kinds of cells are there, what are the different human shapes of the cells, and what are the different kinds of cells that we can find on the face of Earth. So without much further ado, let's have a look. Have you ever wondered that the eggs that we consume is a cell? Yes, you're right. The eggs that we have every day is a real life example of cells. Cells are what that we have always read about is cells are the basic building blocks, the structural unit, the functional unit of life. That means, it means that it is the smallest, the tiniest entity that we can find in a living organism that has life. So cells can be told as the smallest entity that has life. So coming back, it is an excellent news that egg is a real life example where the yolk that we have is a nucleus and the white part of the egg that we have is the cytoplasm of the cell. Next, we come to these two gentlemen who had first observed cells. Yes, you're right. Robert Hooke was the one who first observed dead cells. And when I say he observed dead cells, he saw these cork cells that he had observed through his microscope. And when he saw this picture, he thought to himself that this looked like compartments of monasteries. So compartments of monasteries were known as cella, and thus the word cells was derived. So he was the one to coin the term cells. So Robert Hooke first observed dead cells. However, after years later, Anton von Leeuwenhoek here, he found, or rather he observed living cells, probably or most likely a protozoa, under his first single lens microscope. And then it was discovered that he was the one who first saw living cells. Now, when I say cells have been recognized as a structural function unit of life and everything, I come to this three gentlemen who have individually proposed each statement recognizing cells as a unit of life: Jacob Schleiden, Theodor Swan, and Rudolf Virchow. These three scientists each gave individual statements recognizing cells as what is the main basic feature, what is the main basic character. So let's see each statement separately. So the first statement, all organisms are made up of cells. So when I say all organisms are made up of cells, what does it mean? It means that every organism that we can see on the earth, from a basic unicellular to a basic multicellular organism like a whale or a monkey or even us, everybody are made up of cells. From a small volvox to a big plant to small mushrooms, every organisms are made up of cells. Hence, it can be said that cells are the structural unit of life. That is the smallest unit or the smallest part that needs to be there for the formation of a basic structure or basic animal body. So, all organisms are made up of cells. Second that we come to is cells are the basic units of life. Here, when I say cells are the basic units of life, it means that whenever life was there on this earth, cells was the basic unit, that is the smallest unit that was seen with life. So from there, cells slowly evolved into becoming tissues working together with other cells. Then the tissues became organ became organ system, and it gave rise to an organism. So basically, for a big animal to be formed, a cell needs to assemble itself because cell has life. A baby arising from a zygote, one cell. So a big animal arising from a small cell or a small cell having life. Cells is a basic unit of life. Third statement is omnis cellula is cellular, which means all cells come from cells. That means every cell that we see arises from a cell and give rise to another cell. So every cell that we see has its origin from another cell. Here we see there's a picture of binary fission, which I'm going to come later on. But here we can understand that cells always give rise to another cells. So these three statements that we have read eventually gave way to cell being recognized as a basic unit, a structural unit, and functional unit of life. Now that we have read about cells and recognized them and the definition, let's study the largest cell. The largest cell that we can see is an ostrich egg. Ostrich egg is around how much? Can you guess? It's around 12 to 13 centimeter in width, almost around 20 times heavier than a normal egg. And I'm sure that's pretty humongous to have as an omelette. Next, we have the smallest cell. The smallest cell that we can find is mycoplasma. And I'm sure that the picture even is very vague in depicting where mycoplasma is. It's so small. An average cell size is 1 micron meter. Mycoplasma is around 0.2 micron meter, which is way less. So this is the largest cell and this is the smallest cell. Moving forward, now we come to a very important aspect and a very confusing too, that where did cells come from and why did it evolve into so many different complex types of cells? So it all started from one-celled organisms. Let's see the timeline. Here we see the first thing that is said is prokaryotes. What are prokaryotes? Prokaryotes are those one-celled organisms or unicellular organisms who has their whole body as only one cell. The one cell body does everything, unlike us. So prokaryotes are the bacteria and the viruses. They have been put into a separate kingdom for that. Then comes the unicellular eukaryotes. So these prokaryotes, these simple bacteria, they evolved into eukaryotes, but still they were unicellular. Still they had only one cell in their body. So therefore they were termed as protista and they were given another separate kingdom for themselves. And protista, huge examples are the algae and amoeba, a very good friend. Next comes to these cells started to aggregate themselves, started labor of division, forming tissues and organ system, and formed this multicellular eukaryotes. So it's prokaryotes evolved into unicellular eukaryotes. Unicellular eukaryotes evolved into multicellular eukaryotes, where we, sponges, plants, fungi, all different types of advanced animals are present. Now, when I say prokaryotes and eukaryotes, it does seem a bit confusing, but my later slides will complete the confusion, will just clear it up. Prokaryotes and eukaryotes. I know, both the diagrams seems very confusing, but let me tell you, but trust me when I really tell you that prokaryotes are very simple in structure. Yes, they are. Because there is no nucleus or negligible nucleus. And the structure is very simple compared to eukaryotes. And if you are wondering how, let's check out. They do not have any nucleus. It consists of DNA. It does, because every organism does have genetic material. So does prokaryotes. But they do not have any particular envelope or particular organelle which is devoted to a DNA or enclosed. Another major character of prokaryotes is they have circular DNA. A very fascinating one, isn't it? Then we have another feature, that is they lack membrane-bound organelles. They do not have any organelles which have membrane. So basically, they do not have mitochondria, Golgi bodies, chloroplasts, lysosomes. But they do contain an extra chromosomal DNA. Can you guess what is that extra chromosomal DNA? Right, it's plasmid. And can you tell me what is the use of plasmid? If you think harder, plasmids are used in genetically modified organisms to create them as a vector for transferring some kind of DNA to another bacteria. That's a topic for another day, but yes, extra chromosomal DNA here is plasmid. Another major difference here lies is the ribosomes. The ribosomes are 70S type. Then we have another major difference is peptidoglycan cell wall. The cell wall composition of prokaryotes is peptidoglycan. But there's a slight difference between prokaryotic bacteria is this archaebacteria do not have peptidoglycan. And archaebacteria are those bacteria that are found in a very extreme environments like hydrothermal vents or spring water, very hot spring water. So archaebacteria do not have peptidoglycan, and other than that, all the bacteria has peptidoglycan. They have special appendages like pili, flagella, and capsules. Then prokaryotes, how do they reproduce? They reproduce asexually by binary fission, which I had already I was speaking on a previous slide. Here we can see this is binary fission. And what happens? Here the contents of the cell duplicates and the cell then forms a cleave and becomes two cell. So binary fission is a very simple process by which unicellular organisms divide. But there's another sexual reproduction. No, this is not a true sexual reproduction. But yes, they are known as sexual reproduction because of the transfer of one particular genome of a bacteria or an organism to another organism. And how does this transfer takes place? It takes place in three ways. Conjugation with the help of a sex plus or a bridge, so through which the genome passes from one bacteria to another. See, the plasmid, the circular DNA is getting passed. Transduction, where another bacteriophage transfers that DNA. And transformation. Transformation here is plasmid carries that another DNA and is just getting infused into another bacteria. Now that we have finished about prokaryotes, a very simple structure, we are going to come on eukaryotic cells. Yes, eukaryotic cells are a bit complex cells, but nevertheless, they are a part. So we need to study them. But before that, I'm going to talk about one theory. So as to how this eukaryotic cells become complex, how did they come to have about all these complex organelles in them? This was explained by endosymbiotic theory. Endosymbiotic theory tells us that these organelles were basically these primitive prokaryotic organisms who got infused inside the cell, lost their identity, and became a cell organelle, a dedicated cell organelle. Again, prokaryotic cells got infused into eukaryotic cells, lost their identity as organisms, started dedicating one full function, and became a cell organelle. Is there any examples coming into your mind? Right. Mitochondria and chloroplasts are the very big examples that we can give, which matches in this symbiotic theory. So, coming to characteristics of eukaryotes, they have this proper nucleus in front of us, which has a genetic material. It contains a nucleolus, and here the DNA is linear shaped, right? And eukaryotes have various membrane-bound cell organelles like chloroplast, mitochondria, ribosomes, Golgi apparatus, lysosomes, endoplasmic reticulum, vacuoles. And another difference was the cell wall. Here there is a cell membrane, and the cell membrane is made up of phospholipid layer. Phospholipid layer, that is phosphorus, lipid, a conjugation of these two molecules, and there are two layers of those molecules. Next, we come to reproduction of eukaryotes. Reproduction of eukaryotes takes place by mitosis and meiosis. By mitosis, it produces two daughter cells of the same chromosome number. Meiosis, it produces 4 daughter cells of half the chromosome number. There it was binary fission and sexual reproduction by transduction, transformation, and conjugation. And here it is mitosis and meiosis. That's it. So let's study about what are the different functions of all the cell organelles.
So what are organelles? Organelle means little organ. Organelles are specialized parts of the cell that have jobs to perform. Let's start with the nucleus, the control center of the cell. The nucleus contains DNA, or genetic material. DNA dictates what the cell is going to do and how it's going to do it. Chromatin is the tangled spread out form found inside the nuclear membrane. When a cell is ready to divide, DNA condenses into structures known as chromosomes. The nucleus also contains a nucleolus, which is a structure where ribosomes are made. Outside the nucleus, the ribosomes and the rest of the organelles flip around in the cytoplasm, which is the jelly-like substance. Ribosomes make up the cytoplasm. There are two types of ER. Skeleton. And microtubules, which are thin, hollow tubes. Some organisms, such as plants,
just a few. In humans, for example.
So that we have studied about the different functions of organelles. Let's review that plant cells, they have cell wall, they have plastids such as chloroplast, they have prominent vacuoles, and they do not possess centrosomes. So can you guess what are the characteristics of animal cell? Yes, they do not have cell wall, they do not have chloroplast, they do not have prominent vacuoles, and they do not possess any. They do possess centrosomes, right? Now coming to shapes of different human cells. First is RBC, which is spherical in nature. neurons, which is the longest cell of our body. These are very elongated. Muscle cells, spindle-shaped cells. Skin cells, columnar cells. And the only motile cells of a body, sperms. Now, let's answer these questions. So the gel-like substance found inside cell can be known as? Right, cytoplasm. What does an animal cell have but not plant cell? Right, centrosomes. And which organism reproduces by binary fission? Right, unicellular bacteria. The cell membrane, which is dash lipid layer, phospholipid layer, right, and bilipid layer, because there are two layers. Who first observed living cells? Robert Hooke observed only dead cells. So it was Anton von Leeuwenhoek who first observed living cells. So can you recall the longest cell in human body? Neurons. Let's see. Yes, you're absolutely right. So thank you so much for joining me in this session. Hope to see you again.